Do you know what airlines are best at now? Turning basic help into something that feels like a special favor. I've watched older travelers push through knee pain, long lines, and a crowded gate because they don't want to be seen as difficult or a lot. You shouldn't have to quietly power through that. Because there are policies and accommodations airlines are expected to provide, but they rarely advertise them. And to keep this clean, it's not turn 60 and you automatically get everything. What matters is mobility, medical, or cognitive needs that simply show up more often as we get older. Today I'm giving you 10 protections under US rules and the exact phrases to say. And don't skip number 10. 3 letters that can completely change the tone of the conversation at the airport. Let's start with the move that sets the whole trip up. Request special assistance right when you book, so it's already in the system before you ever step into the terminal. A mistake I see all the time is people waiting until they're sweaty at the gate, trying to explain their needs to an agent who's already stressed out. When the truth is, most of this can be handled when you book. As soon as you get your confirmation code, go into your trip and request special assistance for what you truly need. Think in plain English, wheelchair assistance for long distances, vision or hearing needs, or you need extra time and step-by-step guidance when things get confusing fast. If you're calling or using chat, say it like a simple request. Please add special assistance to my booking and read it back to me. Because if it's not written down, it'll disappear when things get hectic. And this matters even on a foreign airline. If your flight is to or from the US, you want that request living in the booking notes, not in your head. And once your trip is documented like this, tip number 2 is about your mobility aid. Because the airline shouldn't treat it like a bag. There's one travel rule. Airlines almost never volunteer at the counter, even though it changes your whole day. Your cane, walker, or wheelchair isn't treated like a normal bag. A lot of people over 60 assume this only applies if you have a very obvious disability. It doesn't work that way. Under US disability air travel rules, mobility aids are handled in a separate category. Age doesn't activate it. Using the device for safe movement does. So if you rely on it to get through the airport, it shouldn't count against your carry-on limit, and it shouldn't turn into a surprise fee conversation. Here's the part to lock in before you hand anything over, where you'll get it back. Because the worst version of this is landing, standing up, and realizing your walker is headed to baggage claim, meaning the longest walk of the day is happening without the thing you need most. So don't debate it. Just anchor the process with one clean request. Please tag this as an assistive device and return it to me at the aircraft door when we arrive. That sentence sets the category and the return point in one shot. Then do one tiny future you favor. Take a quick photo or 5-second video before you let it leave your hands. Frame, tips, straps, any custom parts. If something comes back bent or missing, you're not explaining from memory, you're showing proof. All right, mobility is handled. Now let's make security feel less chaotic, because TSA Cares can set you up with a real person to guide you through the checkpoint step by step. Don't skip this. Security is where a lot of older travelers start feeling the pressure, because the rules sound different every time, the lines move fast, and nobody wants to hold things up. But if you know about TSA Cares, a lot of that worry can melt away. TSA Cares connects you with a passenger support specialist who can meet you at the checkpoint and guide you step by step through the screening process, so you're not rushing or getting barked instructions in a crowded lane. This is especially helpful if you use a walker or wheelchair, you're traveling with medical devices, or crowds and noise crank up your anxiety. TSA generally recommends reaching out around 72 hours before you fly. Call 855-787-2227, share your flight info, and explain what you need in plain language. But a lot of people qualify and never realize it. So let me tell you a real story about my 68-year-old uncle. He flew home from New York in a leg brace, limping the whole way. A staff member stepped in, brought a wheelchair, and the airline helped him to the gate. He didn't realize you could even ask for that. If you didn't know TSA Cares existed, comment yes. I want to see how many people miss this. If the terminal is what wears you out, guided assistance can save your whole day. Airlines might call it meet and assist, wheelchair service, or an airport escort. Same idea. Someone helps you through long walks and tight connections. Just don't assume it works the same everywhere. It can vary by airport, and sometimes it's a third-party contractor. So request it early, make sure it's in your booking notes, and ask what it includes for your trip. Now, real talk, because this is where people get burned. Tipping. 3 rules so you don't get stranded. Don't tip up front. Ask for a name or badge, and the handoff plan. Who's taking me, and to which gate? And if you get parked and nobody comes back, skip the panic and go straight to the airline desk or airport staff and ask them to recall assistance immediately. That sounds intense, but it happens. One traveler on a New York to Oslo to Bergen connection said she tipped a worker who promised to take her to the gate, and he disappeared. So keep your money in your pocket until you're actually moving. Airport movement is handled. We move into the airplane itself, starting at the gate, because boarding is where calm trips begin, or the aisle turns into a traffic jam fast. You've seen the gate madness. The second boarding starts, people stand up like it's a fire drill, the aisle gets blocked, and everyone's trying to move at the same time. And honestly, if you're young and healthy, that's already annoying. Imagine you're older, your knees don't love sprint walking, or your heart rate spikes the second you feel rushed. This stops being annoying and starts feeling unsafe. But don't worry, this is exactly where the special assistance you requested when you booked starts paying off. You're not showing up cold at the gate trying to convince anyone. You're just asking for the next step, pre-boarding, so you can get settled before the main crowd pours in. At this point, the ask is easier than most people think. Go up before boarding begins, before the rush forms, and say, "Hi there, I requested special assistance earlier. Can I pre-board so I have a little extra time to get to my seat and get settled safely?" That's it. Calm, practical. If you're traveling with someone who helps you, add, "They're traveling with me to assist if they're allowed to board with me." The goal is to start the flight without that stress spike. You board early, take your time, and get situated while there's still space. And if you think a seat that hurts less is only something you have to pay extra for, then the next part is going to change how you see premium seats. Most people think an aisle seat or extra legroom is just an upgrade problem. Like, if you didn't pay for it, you don't get to talk about it. That's not always true. If your body can't tolerate a standard setup for hours, you can request a seat based on what you physically need, not what the seat map is trying to sell you. So, how do you phrase it so it doesn't turn into an upgrade conversation? My advice: stop asking for premium. Ask for a functional seat. A seat that lets you manage a real need safely. If the issue is the bathroom, don't wait until you're doing the awkward hover and sigh routine in row 23. Use plain medical wording, "I need an aisle seat due to a medical need that requires more frequent restroom access." If it's knees or hips, where staying bent turns into pain, make it about movement range, not luxury. "I need more legroom because I can't comfortably keep my knee flexed for extended periods." Is there any seat that meets this functional need you can assign if available? And one mindset shift that helps: the seat map isn't a neutral tool, it's a storefront. So if the website says no, that doesn't mean the answer is no. It means the website didn't see a reason to help you. That's why a quick call can work, and why Day of Changes can suddenly open options you couldn't touch earlier. And if you're already thinking, "Okay, but I need my person next to me," perfect, because the next tip is about getting seated together when someone's traveling with you to assist. Picture this. You board, you finally get a seat that feels manageable, and then you find out your daughter, the person traveling with you to help, is assigned all the way in the back. Now you're thinking, okay, if I need help at 35,000 feet, how is that supposed to work? Here's the key. If someone is traveling as your care attendant, airlines are expected to make a reasonable effort to seat you together in the same cabin when those seats are available. The difference is how you ask. When you contact the airline, be direct and calm. Say, "I'm traveling with a personal care attendant. We need adjoining seats in the same cabin so they can assist me. Please note that in the booking record." If they say, "We can't," don't argue. Just move to the next step. "Okay, what's the best plan you can put in place? Can you flag this for day of reseating if seats open up?" Because seats change all the time. Missed connections, last-minute upgrades, same-day swaps. Your goal is to get the request documented, so you're not starting from zero when boarding gets chaotic. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had an airline separate you from the person you needed next to you? Share your story in the comments so other travelers know what to expect. Let me talk about the bag that causes the most fear for older travelers. The one with your meds, your CPAP, insulin supplies, a brace, a cane, whatever you actually need to function. A lot of people try to hide it inside a regular carry-on because they're worried about fees or attention. Don't do that. The smart move is to keep medical and assistive items together and easy to identify. And keep that bag medical only. Because assistive devices usually don't count against carry-on limits, but if you mix in personal items, the airline can treat it like a normal bag. And please, don't put essential meds in checked baggage. Bags get delayed or misrouted. Your medication schedule doesn't care. Keep your must-have meds, devices, and anything you need to manage a condition in the cabin with you. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but what about liquids and security? TSA does allow medically necessary liquids in larger amounts. You just have to declare them for screening. So don't hide them, label them, and be ready to separate them if asked. And if anything is battery powered, do yourself a favor and check the airline's rules ahead of time, so you're not sorting it out at the counter while people sigh behind you. Up next, what happens when you're already on the plane and you're stuck waiting? Because on long tarmac delays, there are time triggers for water, food, and getting off the aircraft. You know that awful feeling? You're buckled in, the door's closed, and then nothing. No takeoff, no gate, just sitting. If you're over 60 and you have meds you can't miss, blood sugar to manage, or you dehydrate fast, this is the part that feels scary, right? In the US, tarmac delays have real-time triggers. Airlines are expected to provide drinking water and a small snack within 2 hours if it's safe to serve. They also have to keep the basics working: toilets, a comfortable cabin temperature, and medical attention if needed. And you're supposed to get a status update once the delay passes 30 minutes. And they can't keep everyone on board forever. The general limit is 3 hours domestic, 4 hours international, unless there's a safety, security, or air traffic control reason. So how do you use that without sounding like you're starting a war? Around the 2-hour point, you can ask, "Hi, I have a medical condition. I need water and something small to eat so I can take my medication." One important caution: don't get off unless the crew says it's safe. And if you choose to deplane, airlines aren't required to let you back on. And yes, this is why I keep a few med-friendly backups in my personal item. Think glucose tabs, crackers, whatever your routine needs, so you're not trapped by timing. Sometimes you do everything right. Special assistance is noted, you use the right wording, and someone still shuts you down. If that happens, just remember 3 letters: CRO. CRO stands for Complaint Resolution Official. Airlines covered by U.S. disability air travel rules are required to have a CRO available during operating hours, either at the airport or by phone. This is the person trained to handle accommodation issues. And I'm going to give you the exact wording that usually escalates fast on the spot. Say this: "I'm requesting reasonable accommodation under the Air Carrier Access Act. Please connect me with a CRO. If you want it shorter, please get a CRO for this request." When you mention a CRO, the airline knows you understand the rules and you're not easy to brush off. But what if they still don't fix it? Don't let them talk you into credit if you're owed a refund. For cancellations or significant schedule changes you don't accept, you may be entitled to a refund back to the original form of payment, not just a voucher. After the trip, the complaint that creates an official record is a DOT complaint, not a tweet, not a generic contact us form. When you file, make it easy for them to investigate. Include the date, flight number, airports, names if you have them, and what you requested. Use one strong sentence. I requested a reasonable accommodation under the Air Carrier Access Act and was denied. Then add what it caused. Missed flight, extra costs, pain, stress, whatever applies. That's how you turn a no into something the airline has to answer for. All right, before you fly again, I want you to remember what this video is really about. You're not trying to work the system. You're asking for access and safety support so flying doesn't turn into an endurance test, especially when age, pain, or health needs make travel harder. And the biggest takeaway is simple. Request help early, get it noted in your reservation, and use clear wording that's hard to brush off. If you're traveling soon, do me a favor. Save this and send it to someone who needs it. Parent, aunt, friend, because most people struggle just because they don't know what to ask for. And I'd love to hear from you. Which tip surprised you the most? Or what's the one thing you wish airlines made easier for older travelers? Drop it in the comments. Your story might be the reason someone else feels confident enough to ask for help next time. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. I make videos like this so your next trip feels less stressful and a lot more doable.